Ranger Ben Murdoch loved the quiet moments of Yellowstone National Park. The grandeur of geysers erupting and bison grazing on golden meadows often wowed visitors. But for Ben, it was the lesser-known nooks, isolated backcountry trails, hidden valleys, silent forests that truly captured his heart. He'd spent the better part of 5 years patrolling Yellowstone's remotest corners, forging an unspoken bond with the land. But nothing could have prepared him for the strange event that marked the start of his most unsettling mystery. It began on a crisp autumn evening, the sun dipping behind jagged mountains, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. Ben was driving along a dirt service road deep in the park's interior, an area few tourists ventured into, known for rugged terrain and unpredictable wildlife. No traffic or chatter cluttered his radio. Only the hum of his Jeep's engine accompanied him. Then, cutting through the stillness, he heard it, a low, distant whistle. At first, he presumed it was the wind whistling through the pines, but as it drifted through the open window, he recognized the distinct, long, mournful wail of a train horn. The notion was absurd. The nearest railroad line lay dozens of miles away, beyond the park boundary. Yellowstone had no trains crossing its wilderness, yet the whistle persisted, a forlorn cry echoing across the valleys. Ben pulled over, killed the engine, and stepped out onto the gravel. The evening chill prickled his skin. He stood, listening. Sure enough, the whistle blew again, faint yet unmistakable. He spun slowly, scanning the horizon. No smoke, no visible lights. Only the hush of pine trees and the last glow of sunset. The sound emanated from somewhere to the northwest, where the land sloped into a dense forest of lodgepole pines. His radio remained silent, so he hopped back in the Jeep. It must be a trick of the wind, he reasoned, or maybe something mechanical from a distant construction site. Still, an uneasy thrill stirred in him, an odd curiosity about a train horn that had no earthly reason to be there. He radioed the ranger station to see if they'd heard anything. The line crackled, bringing only standard chatter, no mention of trains. Puzzled, Ben decided to continue his route. But that evening he couldn't shake the memory of that lonely whistle echoing through the dusk. A few nights later, circumstances led Ben to a backcountry campground near the park's northern edges. A small group of hardy campers had set up tents by a shallow creek, the backdrop of forest thick with undergrowth. He checked their permits, shared a few safety tips about bear canisters, and prepared to leave. The conversation turned casual, and someone mentioned hearing a strange noise last night. "Sounded like a train in the distance," said a man wearing a worn baseball cap. Ben's ears perked. "Wait, you heard that here?" he asked. The camper nodded. "Yeah, around midnight. At first I thought I was dreaming, but my girlfriend heard it too. Figured maybe I was going nuts, hearing a locomotive in the middle of Yellowstone." Ben forced a laugh, though inside his nerves tightened. "Could be some strange echo," he offered. Another camper, warming her hands by the campfire, frowned. "I grew up near train tracks. I know that horn. It was definitely a train whistle, cautioning them to remain vigilant for wildlife." Ben parted ways, uncertain how to address their claims. Over the next few days, more rangers whispered about visitors reporting faint whistles at odd hours. None had an explanation. The official line was that it must be atmospheric anomalies or illusions. But each new account added weight to the puzzle. Ben found himself confiding in an older ranger, Angela, who'd worked Yellowstone for decades. She nodded, lips pursed. "Years back I heard something like that too once, while camping near a remote valley. A lonely whistle at midnight. Never figured it out. People teased me for imagining things, so I dropped it." He pressed her for details. She shook her head. "Don't recall much more, just that it spooked me. Keep your ears open, Ben. The park has old secrets." He left her office unsettled, determined to investigate further. Part of him burned with curiosity. The other part whispered caution. Some mysteries are best left alone. Late in October, the first snows dusted the higher elevations. The park's bustling summer season was gone, leaving a quieter ambience. One afternoon, Ben hiked a seldom-used trail following leads from a map referencing an old ranger's notation about unusual terrain. He wasn't sure if it connected to the whistle, but he grasped at any clue. He trudged past steam vents, meadows turned brown in the cold, patches of forest turning gold. Eventually, the trail ended in thick brush. Checking his GPS and park map, he pressed on, forging a route through tangles of deadfall and clusters of pines. The late afternoon sun angled through branches. Suddenly, in a small clearing, he stumbled upon something unexpected. Metal rails, rusted train tracks, half buried in leaf litter and soil. He crouched in disbelief, brushing aside debris to confirm it. Sure enough, 2 parallel steel rails, corroded and discolored, a short length protruding from the ground. They extended into the forest, then vanished under layers of dirt. The old ties beneath had largely rotted away. His heart raced. Yellowstone had no known train lines. The presence of these rails contradicted all official park histories. Could it be an abandoned logging spur from a century ago? He snapped photos, taking careful notes of the coordinates. The rails looked ancient, iron flakes crumbling at his touch. A wave of cold air brushed past him, making him shiver despite the mild temperature. Somewhere behind the pines, a faint whistle carried on the breeze. He froze, every hair on end. The whistle was distant yet clear, that forlorn train cry. Impossible. He gazed at the rusted tracks that disappeared into the earth. For a wild moment he pictured a phantom train rumbling by. Shaking off the notion, he set about exploring. But the forest thickened, preventing further progress. Twilight approached, so he reluctantly turned back. That evening, he reported his find to the station chief. The chief was perplexed, promising to look into old records. But the reaction was subdued, overshadowed by other park tasks. Ben realized this matter might not get official attention. He decided to do personal research. Something about those rails felt deeply wrong, like a portal to another time or dimension. Ben scoured the park archives, dusty cabinets of old documents, microfilm records, and historical notes. Hours turned into days. Yellowstone had a complicated past, but no mention of any official train line ever crossing the interior. He dug deeper, contacting local historical societies. Then, in a library a few towns away, he found a cryptic newspaper clipping from 1924. It mentioned a planned spur line for a private tourist railway, slated to pass near the park boundary. The article noted local controversy. Some saw it as progress, others as a destructive intrusion into pristine land. The project apparently stalled. Another snippet he discovered was more ominous. A vague mention of a derailment tragedy in 1924 near the same proposed route. The piece was brief, referencing an experimental run that ended in disaster. No location details, just remote wilderness. No bodies found, and train vanished. The paper lacked follow-up. Could it be connected? The fragments tantalized him. A tourist railway that never officially launched. Yet a possible test run had ended in a derailment, and no remains found. Could that line have cut a short track segment into the park's interior before vanishing from records? The more Ben read, the more convinced he became. The rusted rails I found are from that ill-fated train, and the phantom whistle might be the echo of that tragedy. He felt a swirl of excitement and dread. A phantom train? It sounded insane, but the puzzle pieces aligned. He recalled local legends about ghost trains in old mining towns. Now it was happening in Yellowstone. He had to see more. As autumn deepened, nights stretched longer. The mountainous region took on an austere beauty. Rumors grew among the limited staff. Some nights, a faint rumbling noise and a whistle echoed from nowhere. A few rangers teased Ben about chasing ghost trains, but more than once they admitted hearing odd, distant clattering like wheels on track. One late evening, Ranger Becky reported seeing flickers of light in a remote meadow. It looked like train windows, she said in hushed tones. But when I got closer, nothing was there. Another ranger insisted he felt vibrations in the ground, akin to a passing locomotive. Everyone ended with the same question. But there are no tracks here, right? The tension rose. Some staff avoided that sector at night. The park superintendent, learning of the bizarre stories, demanded they keep it quiet. Didn't want a media circus of paranormal enthusiasts. Meanwhile, Ben pressed on, determined to solve the mystery or at least understand it. Eventually, an opportunity arose for Ben to stake out the newly discovered rusted tracks at night. He packed a thermos of coffee, a camping chair, camera, and audio recorder. Setting up near the half-buried rails, he found a vantage point behind some shrubbery. The crisp air smelled of pine resin. Overhead, stars burned bright. He waited in silence. Hour after hour dragged on, only the occasional hoot of an owl or scurry of a small animal. His watch crept toward midnight. Fighting drowsiness, he sipped coffee. The desert of quiet. Then around 2 a.m., the temperature plummeted unexpectedly. A sudden hush, no insect chirps, no wind. The ground under him felt tense. A distant moan drifted through the trees, building into a recognizable train whistle. His heart thundered. He turned on the audio recorder, scanning the darkness. Slowly, an eerie glow emerged beyond a line of pines. The rails at his feet, rusted and broken, began to vibrate. He could hear it, a faint metallic rattle. This is real. Then, unbelievably, a shape materialized from the gloom. A black steam locomotive chugging forward on a track that shouldn't exist, wagons trailing behind. The funnel belched plumes of dark smoke, headlights dull but present. It was semi-translucent in places, as if half real, half shadow. Its wheels screeched. The ground rumbled with impossible force. Ben gawked, adrenaline spiking. He raised his camera, snapping photos. The lens captured only darkness and some faint blur, but to his naked eye, the locomotive was painfully clear. As it roared closer, he glimpsed details: cracked metal plates, broken windows. Flickers of spectral light glowed within. Then the train slowed, as if passing right in front of him. His breath caught at the sight of the passenger cars. Windows revealed silhouettes of people, ghostly pale, hollow-eyed. Their expressions locked in silent screams. Some wore old-fashioned 1920s attire. A chill enveloped him. He recalled the news clipping about "no bodies found." Here they are, he thought, in horror haunting this phantom train. The train's whistle shrieked, echoing across the forest. Then abruptly it sped up, vanishing into the trees with a final clang of wheels. The entire spectacle lasted maybe a minute. Where it had gone, there was no sign, only silent woods. The ground ceased vibrating. The rusted rails at his feet lay inert and half-buried. Shaking, Ben realized tears streaked his cheeks. The raw sadness in those passengers' eyes. He stowed his gear, heart still racing. The recorder captured the whistle, the rumble. He had proof, sort of. He also felt dread. What if the train returned or tried to claim him as it did those it transported in 1924? He departed at first light, stumbling, mind spinning. I saw it. The phantom train is real. After recovering from the shock, Ben used the next weeks to delve deeper into historical archives, determined to piece together the train's fate. With new urgency, he found obscure references in local newspapers. Piecing them together, in mid-1924, a private venture had indeed attempted a tourist railway extension to show off the wonders of Yellowstone. The route was rushed, the terrain harsh. On the night of its inaugural, unpublicized test run, the train derailed near a hidden gorge, toppling into the forest. No survivors were ever recovered. Some believed the wreck was never fully located, storms having buried or scattered debris. Strange rumors circulated. An entire locomotive and passenger cars vanished. Locals reported ghostly whistles in the decades after. But official records grew silent, possibly suppressed to avoid negative press for the region. Everything matched the phenomenon. The desperate souls of that ill-fated train, trapped in a loop between life and death, doomed to ride an incomplete track. The notion left him cold. The next question: why here? Why reappear in fleeting visions? Did the train or its spirits seek release, or simply replay that final journey? As winter's chill intensified, sightings grew more frequent. Night travelers on remote roads heard whistles or glimpsed flickering train lights among the pines. Some woke to the ground shaking, as though a heavy locomotive passed beneath them. Rangers scoured the forest, found old twisted metal fragments that might be from the wreck. Tension mounted. One night, Ben was awakened in his cabin by the unmistakable sound of chugging steam outside. He rushed out, only to see swirling mist. Then the horns died away. The next morning he found faint impressions of train wheels in soft earth behind his cabin-like ghostly tracks. The phenomenon seemed drawn to him. He recalled how the train had nearly brushed him by the rails. The sorrowful faces behind the windows haunted his dreams, beckoning him to solve their riddle. He resolved to attempt a final confrontation, find the train's actual derailment site, see if that might free those souls, or at least glean closure. He enlisted 2 rangers sympathetic to his cause, Angela and Mark. While management frowned on chasing ghost stories, they gave a discreet nod, telling them to be safe. The trio gathered supplies, GPS, ropes, a metal detector, cameras, and portable lights. They hypothesized the derailment site was near where the rusted rails ended, possibly further into the forest. They planned to search thoroughly, hoping to uncover the train's physical remains. They set off on a cold, cloudy morning following the partial track segment. The rails soon disappeared under thick underbrush. They used the metal detector to trace faint signals, pushing deeper into an area seldom visited by humans. The forest grew denser, a labyrinth of pines, creeks, and stony ridges. They found scattered evidence: old iron spikes, warped chunks of steel, rotted timbers. Some pieces half buried, some fused with tree roots. The metal detector beeped frequently, guiding them further. The day wore on, gloom settling as clouds blocked the sun. A sense of foreboding hung in the air. Eventually, they reached a slope overlooking a narrow ravine. The detector shrilled near a boulder. Clearing leaves revealed a large rusted metal plate, possibly a piece of the locomotive's boiler. Nearby lay a twisted axle and shattered wheels, concealed by decades of accumulated debris. Angela gasped. This must be it, the crash site. Mark found decaying wood that might have once formed the passenger car's frame. No bones, no personal artifacts, just fragments of metal and rotted beams. The wreck was so thoroughly reclaimed by nature that it was near invisible. As they poked around, the daylight began to fade. They hadn't realized how late it was. A hush fell over the ravine. "We should document quickly and head back," Mark said, voice tense. Ben felt drawn to the spot, as if the lost souls of that train lingered. He took photos, capturing rusted beams jutting from the ground. Suddenly, wind rattled the branches overhead. The temperature plummeted. Angela shivered. We should leave now." Then came the whistle, a low, mournful cry echoing across the ravine. They froze, hearts pounding. The ground trembled slightly. Mark's eyes widened. "Oh God, is it coming here?" The swirling sense of dread peaked. Their radios crackled with static. The whistle sounded again, closer. In the fading light, Ben glimpsed a spectral shimmer. Just across the ravine, beyond a line of pines, a black shape materialized, steam billowing. It was the phantom locomotive, forging a track that didn't physically exist, trailed by half-smashed passenger cars. The trio stared in shock as the train rumbled forward on an invisible line that seemed to pass right through the ruin. Its windows glowed with an otherworldly light. The outlines of spectral passengers pressed to the glass, some moaning, some wide-eyed. The train slowed at the ravine's edge, as if reenacting the moment of derailment. The shriek of metal was deafening. Sparks flew. The entire locomotive lurched, swaying dangerously. Angela screamed, covering her ears. Then a horrifying clang of steel on rock. The engine tipped, ghostly smoke erupting. Phantom figures tumbled in silhouette. The screech of tortured metal resounded. The watchers wanted to help, but how do you intervene in a decades-old tragedy replaying in spectral form? Driven by empathy, Ben scrambled along the ravine's edge. The phantom wreck twisted in silent agony, the passengers' apparitions flailing. He heard distant cries, or perhaps illusions. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the entire scene froze in a swirl of ghostly sparks. The image flickered, threatening to vanish. Ben yelled, "Wait! We're here to help!" He didn't know if they could hear. The locomotive's shape quivered, lights dimming. Mark and Angela stood behind him, transfixed. In a burst of emotion, Ben knelt by a large piece of rusted wreckage. Perhaps the spirits were bound here, repeating their final moments. He placed a hand on the metal. "We found you," he said softly. "We know what happened. You're not forgotten." The wraith-like figures flickered. He sensed confusion or relief. Then the entire spectral train began to glow more brightly, the orbs forming around it. For a moment, the illusions of crying passengers stabilized, staring at Ben with longing. The whistle blew once, a mournful note resonating with finality. Gradually, the apparition's harsh lines softened. The engine, cars, and silhouettes dissolved into swirling light. The swirl rose above the ravine. Angela stifled a sob. Mark watched, mouth agape. The swirling luminescence ascended, scattering among the pine tops. In moments, the forest was dark again, silent except for the watchers' ragged breaths. The rusted debris remained, but no sign of the haunting locomotive. Ben, tears misting his eyes, felt a solemn stillness. It was as if the spirits, recognized at last, had found closure. They made their way back under starlight, hearts heavy yet oddly uplifted. Something about that encounter felt conclusive, like a circle closing on a nearly century-old tragedy. They reported everything to the station. Officially, the story was a quiet note in the files. Historic train wreck site discovered, probable paranormal sightings. Management kept it hush-hush to avoid sensationalism. In the weeks following, no more phantom whistles plagued the park. Campers no longer reported glowing passenger cars or ground vibrations at night. The rusted remnants of track and locomotive parts were documented and left in peace, a historical curiosity well off the beaten path. Ranger Ben resumed daily duties with a new perspective. Yellowstone was more than geysers and wildlife. It held secrets spanning time. He believed that acknowledging the lost souls had freed them from their endless loop, letting them finally rest. Of course, not everyone accepted a ghost train tale, but those who'd seen or heard it felt the difference. The nights felt calmer, the desert wind carrying no forlorn horn echo. Yet on certain misty evenings, when the sky is overcast and the forest hushes, Ben sometimes listens for a faint whistle in the distance. He hears only the sigh of wind. Perhaps the phantom train found peace, its tragic passengers no longer trapped in an eternal final ride. But in the hush of Yellowstone's deep nights, the memory lingers. A single whistle could break the silence, heralding the return of that black locomotive searching for resolution. For now, though, the phantom train of Yellowstone remains an unspoken legend, a cautionary tale among rangers, a ghost story for local campfires. No official sign stands at the wreck site. No public tours mention the ill-fated 1924 run. The forest reclaims the remains, burying the twisted tracks in leaves and dust. And if a traveler one day strays off trail, stumbles upon rusted rails leading nowhere, they might still catch the echo of a train horn, decades too late, whispering through the pines. A reminder that the park's wilderness extends beyond the living realm, bridging the past in ways we can't always comprehend.